never want to hear your name. I never want to see your face ever again. 17 medical examiners testified about what your bullets did to our children's bodies. And you sat there with the same freaking expression you have now. None. Cold, no emotion, no remorse. What type of animal are you?
Terror in the hallways, fear in the classrooms, the devastating legacy of school shooters who have left a trail of destruction and heartbreak.
You chased him down the hall and fired the last bullet that paralyzed him. Why? Why did you do it? Why?
Same pulled the trigger that killed your sons, now that basically memory.
Their brutal crimes are forever engraved in our minds.
Sure you didn't take the gun so you could kill Mr. Gruno a week later?
No.
Do you have any thoughts of hurting anybody with that weapon?
No.
A reminder of the darkness that exists in our world. But it's not just their actions that are shocking. It's their lack of regret, their absence of guilt, and their indifference to the lives they've shattered. Join us as we examine the cases of T.J. Lane, Dimitrios Pagourtzis, and other school shooters who showed no remorse in court. Nicholas Cruz. Nicholas Cruz, the accused gunman behind the mass shooting at a United States high school, shocked many when he was seen laughing with his lawyer during his trial, an emotionless display that angered the public and left the judge visibly stunned. This disturbing behavior showed Cruz's apparent lack of remorse for the horrific crime he committed. Even as the families of the victims shared heartbreaking testimonies about their loved ones' tragic deaths, Cruz continued to act nonchalant, casually chatting with his lawyer. The stark contrast between his carefree attitude and the immense pain he caused was deeply disturbing. The shooting, which occurred on February 14, 2018, saw 19-year-old Cruz open fire on students and staff at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, resulting in the deaths of 17 people and injuries to 17 others. Cruz began his attack by assembling his weapon near a stairwell by the first-floor classrooms. At one point, a student named Christopher McKenna stumbled upon him, and Cruz warned him to flee, hinting that something terrible was about to happen. Cruz then unleashed his rampage, killing 17 and wounding 17 more. Afterward, he attempted to escape by blending in with fleeing students, but was captured without resistance about an hour and 20 minutes later in nearby Coral Springs. Among the victims were 14 students: Alyssa Alhadef, Martin Duke Anguiano, Nicholas Dware, Jaime Guttenberg, Luke Hoyer, Kara Loughran, Gina Montalto, Joaquin Oliver, Elena Petty, Meadow Pollock, Helena Ramsey, Alex Schachter, Carmen Schentrup, and Peter Wang, and 3 staff members, geography teacher Scott Beigel, wrestling coach Chris Hickson, and assistant football coach Aaron Feiss, who lost their lives while rushing toward danger or helping students to safety. Adding to the horror, a disturbing video was found on Cruz's phone, where he detailed his planned attack. During the trial, the families of the victims and the survivors confronted Cruz, voicing their deep grief and anger. Yet Cruz remained emotionless, dressed in a red prison jumpsuit and glasses, initially hiding behind a face mask. He only removed it when Jennifer Guttenberg, the mother of 14-year-old Jaime, asked him to, calling it disrespectful. Even then, his expression remained unchanged. Ultimately, Cruz was found guilty of 17 counts of premeditated first-degree murder and 17 counts of attempted first-degree murder, a grim reminder of the lives he shattered. He was sentenced to 34 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would never walk free again. However, the sentence did little to satisfy the victims' families, who were left questioning whether the jury's decision favored the life of the shooter over the innocent lives he took. For the victims and their loved ones, the trial's conclusion only marked the end of one painful chapter in an endless journey of grief that will stay with them forever. Dimitrios Pagourtzis. There was no trace of regret, no apology, not even remorse in the heart of the shooter who turned Santa Fe High School into a war zone on May 18, 2018, a chilling reenactment of a scene straight out of Call of Duty. Dimitrios Pagourtzis mercilessly claimed the lives of 10 people, 8 students and 2 teachers, while wounding 13 others, all while humming "Another One Bites the Dust" in a horrifying display of cold-blooded violence. His complete lack of remorse only deepened the horror, as he made no effort to acknowledge the pain he caused. Standing behind the glass during his private hearing, his demeanor revealed a person who wished to be anywhere but there, facing the consequences of his monstrous actions. He showed his indifference even as he casually signed the documents handed to him before being led away. This raises a disturbing question. What drives someone to commit such an atrocity? At least one witness suggested that Pagourtzis had been relentlessly bullied by fellow students and even coaches, yet outwardly, he showed no signs of the storm brewing within. To those around him, he seemed like just another student, with nothing to suggest the darkness lurking beneath. His teachers noticed nothing unusual, nothing that hinted at his deadly intentions. However, when authorities went through his journals, both digital and handwritten, they found something far more sinister. Not only had he carefully planned the shooting, but he also intended to end his own life afterward. A grim discovery that showed these dark thoughts had been simmering for a long time. On that tragic day, a sense of normalcy was shattered in the art complex of Santa Fe High School as Pagourtzis unleashed his deadly rampage with his father's gun. As he stalked the halls, he would burst into laughter, crack jokes, and taunt his victims with a gleeful surprise before attacking. His reign of terror ended after a fierce gunfight with police, which left him wounded and forced him to surrender. Yet beneath this senseless massacre lies a tangled web of tragedy. Pagourtzis' mental instability was well known, but his parents, aware of both his fragile state and history of being bullied, failed to prevent him from accessing the very weapons he used: a .38 pistol and a sawed-off shotgun. 5 years have passed since the tragic Santa Fe High School shooting, yet justice remains out of reach. Dimitrios Pagourtzis, the accused gunman, is still in custody at a state hospital, deemed unfit to stand trial after multiple psychiatric evaluations. Charged with capital murder and aggravated assault against a public servant, Pagourtzis remains in the Galveston County Jail without bond, his fate still undecided. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole after 40 years. For now, the families of the victims and a grieving community continue to wait, their pursuit of justice trapped in an endless limbo. Devin Erickson. In the Douglas County courtroom, 18-year-old Devin Erickson sat in an orange prison uniform, showing a disturbing calmness. His eyes portrayed a chilling detachment, a striking contrast to the devastating reality of what he had done. On May 7, 2019, Erickson, along with 16-year-old Alec McKinney, unleashed a deadly attack at STEM School Highlands Ranch. They took the life of Kendrick Castillo and left 8 others wounded both physically and emotionally. But what's even more disturbing is that Erickson had repeatedly joked about school shootings before the tragedy, his dark humor a grim hint of the horror he would soon bring to life. He went so far as to tell his peers to "don't come to school," hinting at the terrifying event that was going to take place. The violence erupted in a heartbeat, shattering the calm of a high school classroom where seniors had gathered to watch The Princess Bride just days before graduation. According to a student, Erickson allegedly pulled out a gun and shouted, "Nobody move." But in the face of this terror, 3 courageous students, Kendrick Castillo, Joshua Jones, and Brendan Bialy, refused to stand by. They charged at Erickson, determined to stop him from shooting. Tragically, Castillo's brave act cost him his life. He was shot in the chest when Erickson's gun jammed after 4 shots. However, the quick thinking and bravery of Jones and Bialy prevented further bloodshed as they subdued and disarmed Erickson. During his final hearing, as the verdicts were read out, Devin Erickson stood almost motionless, hands clasped in front of him, his gaze fixed straight ahead. His expression barely changed, and he only blinked occasionally as his parents watched from the courtroom. Dressed in a gray suit and tie, Erickson looked very different from the person who had walked into that school with purple hair and deadly intentions. Convicted on 46 counts, including first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and supplying a juvenile with a handgun, Erickson was sentenced on September 17, 2021, to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Before we go on with the rest of the video, here's our subscriber's pick for today. When we look at the stories of school shooters who showed no remorse in court, 18-year-old TJ Lane stands out as one of the most unrepentant. It wasn't just because he took the lives of 3 students on February 27, 2021, but also because of his complete lack of guilt and empathy as he sat in the Geauga County Juvenile Court in Chardon on March 19, 2013, listening to the heart-wrenching testimony of grieving families. His words were vile and unrepentant, but what was most disturbing was the twisted smile on his face. A smile that seemed to take pleasure in the suffering of those who had lost their loved ones. When Lane was given the chance to speak to the court, he delivered a brief, crude statement that ended with the words, "Fuck all of you," before raising his middle finger at the courtroom full of grieving families. This shocking gesture sparked immediate outrage, both within the courtroom and across the nation. Even as the judge sentenced him to 3 life terms in prison without the possibility of parole, Lane's only response was to laugh, further highlighting his complete lack of empathy for the pain and devastation he had caused. What does Lane's behavior in court say about his character, and what message was he trying to send with his crude statement and gesture? Join the conversation and share your thoughts in the comments below. Now let's get back to the video. Ethan Crumbley. Tragedy struck on November 30th, 2021, when a mass shooting shook the halls of Oxford High School in Michigan, leaving 4 students dead and 7 others, including a teacher, fighting for their lives. The perpetrator, 15-year-old Ethan Robert Crumbley, wielded a 9mm semi-automatic handgun with deadly precision. But what happened next was just as frightening. Crumbley's total lack of emotion as he faced justice. As the judge read out 24 counts of murder and terrorism, Crumbley's expression remained blank, his voice flat as he pleaded guilty to each charge. The courtroom was a scene of heartbreaking contrasts, with family members of the victims overcome with grief, while Crumbley showed no remorse. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. Crumbley's admission that he had funded his own weapon, giving his parents the money to buy the handgun used in the attack. When questioned about his actions, Crumbley responded affirmatively, acknowledging his guilt. By pleading guilty to murder and terrorism charges, Crumbley became the first shooter in United States history to admit to terrorism without a trial. Here, surveillance footage captured Ethan Crumbley's actions on the day of the shooting. He entered a bathroom, emerging just a minute later, armed with a semi-automatic handgun. Without hesitation, he began firing in the hallway, targeting students as they transitioned between classes. Panic erupted as hundreds of students scrambled to flee, but Crumbley calmly and deliberately continued his rampage, walking down the hallway and shooting into classrooms, pursuing those who couldn't escape. 3 students, Madison Baldwin, 17, Tate Meyer, 16, and Hannah Juliana, 14, tragically lost their lives at the scene, while 8 others, including a teacher, were injured. Tate Meyer was reportedly shot while bravely attempting to stop the gunman and died in a police vehicle on the way to the hospital. On December 1, a 4th student, 17-year-old Justin Schilling, succumbed to his injuries in the hospital. As part of the investigation, authorities executed a search warrant at Crumbley's home, where they seized a cell phone, a journal, several long guns, and other items, all of which provided further insight into the shooting and Crumbley's prior social media activity. Ethan Crumbley's cell phone held 2 videos, both recorded the night before the attack, where he outlined his sinister plan to release a deadly rampage on his school, heartlessly plotting to take the lives of innocent students. His journal entries further exposed his dark and twisted desires, including a quote, "Hopefully my shooting will cause Biden to get impeached." However, it was later revealed that beneath the surface of this senseless violence lay a heartbreaking tale of parental neglect and depressing loneliness that had driven him to the brink of despair. As his verdict was delivered, Crumbley became the first minor to be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. He was convicted of a litany of heinous crimes, including terrorism, resulting in death, 4 counts of first-degree murder, 7 counts of assault with intent to murder, and 12 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Yet, in a surprising turn of events, when he was asked to speak before his final sentencing, he gave a remorseful apology, his words laced with a hint of sincerity. "I am a really bad person. I have done terrible things that no one should ever do." Whatever the sentence handed down, he added, "I do plan to be better." However, his words fell flat for the grieving parents, who remained unsatisfied with his apology, their pain and anger still raw from the loss they suffered. Sky Boosh. April 20th, 2018 is a day that will forever haunt the students and teachers of Forest High School. On that fateful morning, Sky Booch stormed onto the campus, firing a shot from his 9mm semi-automatic handgun into a classroom door. The bullet pierced the door and struck a student in the foot, sending the school into a frenzy. Chaos erupted as panic spread, but in the midst of the terror, a quick-thinking teacher bravely stepped in, managing to coax Skye into a nearby classroom. There, Skye was finally subdued and taken into custody by law enforcement. As Skye was being detained, the school descended further into chaos. Students fled in terror, many seeking refuge at a nearby church where worried parents anxiously waited. Fortunately, the injured student survived, thanks to the swift response of the medical team. Skye's actions led to serious consequences. He was charged with discharging a firearm on school grounds. While in jail, Skye opened up about his struggles with mental illness, revealing that the shooting was his desperate attempt to expose his own instability and cry out for help. He claimed that he never intended to harm anyone and that his actions were driven by his mental illness. Skye also mentioned that he had received some treatment for his mental health issues before the incident, but felt he needed more intensive care. He expressed a desire to be placed in a secure environment where he could receive proper treatment and ensure public safety. Ultimately, his actions led to his confinement, providing him with the structured setting he sought. After spending years in prison awaiting trial, Skye's case finally concluded on April 20th, 2021. To avoid a life sentence, his defense team negotiated a plea deal. Skye pleaded no contest to the charges, which paved the way for his eventual release. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison with a minimum of 25 years to be served before becoming eligible for parole. This means that one day, after serving the majority of his sentence, Skye could have the chance to regain his freedom. Barry Loukatis. As he walked across the courtroom, Barry Loukatis' attitude showed a sense of remorse for the lives he had taken. Yet, it was unclear whether this remorse came from genuine guilt or from fear of the consequences he now faced. Despite the visible signs of regret, Loukatis remained silent throughout the proceedings, offering no apology. His silence left everyone wondering whether his remorse was sincere or merely a reaction to the gravity of his situation. On February 2, 1996, Barry Loukatis, then an 8th grader at Frontier Junior High School in Moses Lake, Washington, armed himself with a rifle and 2 handguns. He walked into his 5th period algebra class and opened fire, killing 2 of his classmates, Manuel Vela Jr., 14, and Arnie Fritz, 14, as well as their teacher, Leona Carras, a 49-year-old mother of 4. After the deadly assault, Loukatis held the remaining students hostage at gunpoint. He attempted to take gym teacher Jonathan Lane hostage, even threatening to put the rifle's barrel in Lane's mouth. Meanwhile, police arrived and tried to communicate with Loukatis from the hallway. In a brief moment, when Loukatis pointed the rifle at the ceiling, Lane, a former champion wrestler, seized the opportunity. He charged at Loukatis, pinning both him and the gun against the wall. In less than 10 minutes, the terrifying ordeal was over. At just 16, Barry Loukatis was tried as an adult and received a harsh sentence: 2 life terms plus 205 years, with no possibility of parole. However, in 2017, Loukatis finally offered a long-awaited apology to the victims' families during his resentencing hearing. With handcuffs on his wrists, he directly addressed the families for the first time, his voice filled with remorse. "I am sorry for what I did. What I did was weak, evil, and senseless." Although his apology brought some closure to the families who had waited over 2 decades to hear those words, it did little to ease their pain and trauma. Ultimately, Loukatis' apology didn't lead to a reduced sentence. Instead, he was resentenced to an additional 189 years, ensuring that he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Nathaniel Brazil. During his trial, Nathaniel Brazil took the stand to testify about the tragic shooting at Lake Worth Middle School, where he shot and killed his teacher, Barry Grunow. As Brazil answered questions, his voice was flat and emotionless, almost as if he saw the trial as just an interview rather than a serious court hearing. This detached attitude added to the confusion and heartbreak surrounding the case, leaving many wondering how a 13-year-old could commit such a horrific act and seem so disconnected from its consequences. The events that led to this tragedy began on May 26, 2000, the last day of the school year. Brazil, a 7th grader, had been sent home earlier that day for throwing a water balloon. But when he got home, he made a decision that would change his life, and the lives of many others, forever. He grabbed a .25 caliber handgun, returned to the school, and shot Barry Grunow, a well-loved English teacher who had dedicated his life to educating young minds. As the trial unfolded, shocking details emerged that shed light on what led to this terrible event. Despite his age, Brazil was tried as an adult and convicted of second-degree murder for Grunow's death, along with aggravated assault for threatening another teacher with the same gun. The jury's decision not to convict him of first-degree murder, which would have required proof of premeditation and carried a mandatory life sentence in Florida, offered a small hope for his rehabilitation. However, the consequences were still severe. Brazil was sentenced to 25 years in state prison, followed by 7 years of probation, a sentence that acknowledged the gravity of his actions while leaving room for the possibility of redemption. Even so, the memories of that tragic day continue to haunt everyone involved. Charles Andrew Williams. Even as the gravity of his crimes weighed on him, 15-year-old Charles Andrew "Andy" Williams walked into the courtroom with a disturbing calmness, his eyes locked in a cold, menacing stare. Just feet away, the grieving families of his victims sat in anguish, their lives forever changed by his actions. Williams's indifferent expression seemed to show the monstrous nature of his crimes as he faced charges for the murders of Brian Zukor, 14, and Randy Gordon, 17, along with the attempted murder of 11 students and 2 school supervisors, each shot during his deadly rampage. The tragic event started on the morning of March 5, 2001, in Santee, California. Williams, armed with a .22 caliber revolver taken from his father's locked gun cabinet, entered a boys' bathroom at Santana High School. Without warning, he began shooting, ultimately hitting 15 people. 2 would later die from their injuries. In the weeks leading up to the attack, Williams had reportedly tried to seek help, including an attempt to speak with a school counselor, only to be turned away because the office was full. While some claimed he mentioned bullying and even hinted at bringing a gun to school, there was no solid proof to support these allegations. In a chilling twist, Williams later told his psychiatrist that he never intended to harm anyone, despite boasting to friends about the attack. He claimed his motive was to gain respect by bringing a gun to school, saying, "I didn't think 2 boys were going to die. I didn't think 13 people were going to get shot. I just thought I was going to make a lot of noise and that the cops were going to show up." This explanation rings hollow, especially given his experience with firearms, including skeet shooting, hunting, and gun safety training. It's hard to believe that a 15-year-old with such a background could truly think a .22 caliber bullet was harmless. After the attack, it became clear that Williams had considered the consequences of his actions. Despite understanding the potential harm and knowing he would likely be punished, he went ahead with his plan. He had even threatened to pull a Columbine to at least a dozen students, showing a clear intent to cause harm. During the shooting, he deliberately shot his first victim in the back of the head at point-blank range, killing him instantly, even if he had thought a .22 bullets were harmless. The instant death of his first victim should have made him realize the deadly impact of his actions. Yet, as noted in a court report, Williams showed no remorse, reloading his gun multiple times and continuing to shoot students and staff without any concern for the lives he was destroying. Williams' calmness persisted even after he was taken into custody. Deputy Jack Smith, who arrested Williams at the school, described him as very calm and very cold, with an expressionless face that showed no emotion, almost as if he were indifferent to the chaos he had caused. This unsettling behavior remained throughout his court sentence, where he showed no visible remorse for the lives he had taken. In the end, Williams accepted full responsibility for his actions by pleading guilty to all charges, sparing everyone the ordeal of a trial. On August 15, 2002, a California judge sentenced him to 50 years to life in prison, holding him accountable as an adult for his horrific crimes. With this sentence, the legal chapter of the Santana High School shooting closed, offering a sense of justice and closure to the community and the victims' families, while ensuring that Williams would live with the consequences of his choices for the rest of his life. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.